The air in the city of Kagari was thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and damp stone, the kind that clung to your skin like a second layer. It was late autumn, or perhaps early winter, for time in Kagari had a way of bending, especially in the old districts where the gears of progress ground slower than the rest. I have always found cities fascinating, don't you? The way they hum with life, yet beneath that hum lies a quiet, almost mechanical rhythm, like clockwork but with hearts instead of cogs. Kagari was no different, though it had its own peculiarities. Our story begins in a district known as the Mews, where narrow alleys wound between houses taller than most, their facades adorned with intricate carvings of cats, some sleek and regal, others mischievous, with tails curling like question marks. This was the home of the Nikoya, a guild or perhaps a clan, for they liked to think of themselves as such, that had long ago given up on being merely humans who worked in cat-themed businesses. I may have grown up here, or perhaps I wandered into it one day and never left, like a moth drawn to the lantern's glow, only to realize too late that the light was just an illusion. Either way, the Mews felt like mine. Now if you've ever seen a cat slink through sunlight, tail flicking with every step, you'll understand how I moved as I stepped out of my tiny apartment and into the alleyway. My ears twitched at the sound of a street musician's flute, playing something sad and slow, a tune that made your chest ache just a little. I paused to adjust the straps of my satchel, which was packed with half-finished sketches of mechanical things. My hobby, inventing gadgets no one would ever ask for, and a notebook filled with equations that looked like they were scribbled by someone who had lost interest halfway through. Spoiler, that someone was me. Ahead, the alley opened into a small plaza where the Kagori clock stood sentinel. It was an old contraption, taller than 3 men, its brass face covered in tiny gears that turned with eerie precision. The clock did not just tell time, it was said to predict weather, tides, and even the mood of the city. Or at least, that's what the locals whispered when they were feeling poetic. I had no time for such superstitions, but I did have business at the Gear and Whisker, a shop nestled between 2 buildings like a cat squeezing into a tight spot. The sign above the door creaked as I pushed it open, the bells inside jingling in protest. "Oh, Momo, you're late," came the voice of my neighbor and business partner Rin. She was a fox, no, not like the mythical kind, but one of those red-furred humans who could pass for a cartoon if you squinted hard enough. Her ears were always twitching with impatience, and her tail flicked whenever she was annoyed. Today it flicked aggressively. "I had to stop and admire your handiwork," I said, gesturing to the display in front of us. A series of intricate clockwork cats, their tails moving in tiny arcs as if they were stifling yawns. "You really outdid yourself this time." Rin rolled her eyes, but there was no real malice in it. We had been in this together for years, her with the business acumen, me with the ideas that were more often wrong than right. "Anyway," she said, "we have a new customer. Someone who wants to buy one of these, but only if we can modify it." My ears perked up. Custom orders were rare, and even rarer was someone willing to pay for my chaos-in-a-box designs. "Oh, what kind of modification?" Rin smirked. "They want the cat's tail to sing when wound up." I blinked. Sing?" "Yes," she said, as if that made perfect sense. "Like a music box but with, well, you know, a tail." I considered this for a moment, tapping my chin. "You mean like a whistling tail or actual musical notes? Because I can do whistling, no problem. Musical notes might require more gears and less sleeping on my part." "Momo," Rin interrupted, her ears flattening against her head. "Just say you'll try." I sighed dramatically. "Fine, but if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you for the explosion that will definitely happen." Rin snorted. You say that about every project. And yet here we are, I said, grinning. She shook her head, but she was smiling too. Well, our customer turned out to be a human, a rare sight in Kagari, where most people had some kind of animal trait, be it ears, tails, or the uncanny ability to see in the dark like a cat. I definitely did not have that last one. I squinted just as hard as the next person at night. This man was tall, with sharp angles to his face and hair so black it seemed to drink the light around him. He moved with quiet precision, like someone who had spent too much time studying how others walked. He introduced himself as Kaito, a name that sounded both elegant and a little cold, like the edge of an obsidian blade. I want a clockwork cat, he said, his voice smooth, that can sing when its tail is wound up. The melody should be customizable. Rin and I exchanged glances. You're not the first to ask for this, Rin said carefully, but it's unusual. Kaido's lips twitched, almost like a smile, but not quite. I'm aware. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, ornate box, brass with engravings of cats chasing each other around the sun. It looked expensive. Too expensive. This was my mother's, he said, holding it out to us. She used to say that music could mend broken things. I took the box gently, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. Inside was a single, delicate key shaped like a crescent moon. She left this for me when I was young, Kaito continued. And now I'd like to see what it unlocks. Rin and I shared another glance. This was getting way too dramatic for a simple tail modification job. I cleared my throat. All right, Kaido-san, we'll do our best, but we can't promise anything. My inventions are more prone to creative malfunctions. He nodded as if he'd expected this. That's fine. I was prepared for that possibility. Rin and I escorted him back to my workshop. A cramped space filled with half-built gadgets, blueprints pinned haphazardly to the walls, and a single very uncomfortable chair that I insisted on calling a thinking seat, but which I had sat in exactly twice. Kaido watched as I sketched out designs for the singing tail, his expression unreadable. Occasionally, he'd ask questions about the mechanics or how long it would take to complete. About a month, I offered, then winced. Maybe less if we work overtime, but I do have that one project where I... Rin cut me off with a look. Right, I said quickly. Definitely a month. Kaido nodded, then excused himself to leave, saying he had other errands to run. As soon as the door shut behind him, Rin turned to me with narrowed eyes. What was that about? I shrugged innocently. Him? Oh, just your average mysterious customer who wants a singing cat tail and seems to carry around emotional baggage like it's nothing. Rin groaned, You're impossible. Thank you, I said, grinning. Well, of course, my first attempt at the singing tail was a disaster. I won't bore you with the technical details. Suffice it to say that I mixed up the gears, miscalculated the tension on the string, which was meant to vibrate like the strings of a violin, and ended up with something that sounded more like a dying seagull than a melody. Rin stood in the doorway, arms crossed, as I fiddled with the mess for the third time that afternoon. I told you this was going to go wrong. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Yes, but do we have any other options? Should I just give up and tell Kaido-san his mother's key is cursed? Rin didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to the half-built clock on my workbench, a project from months ago that was supposed to chime when it rained, which, let's be honest, was about 80% of the time in Kagari. She picked up a small gear and examined it, turning it between her fingers. What if we use this instead? It's got a more delicate resonance. I perked up. You're a genius. Why didn't I think of that? Rin ignored my compliment. Because you're you, Momo. The one who thinks gears are just things to stack haphazardly until something seems to work. I gasped, clutching my chest. That's not true. Is too, Rin muttered, setting the gear back down. We spent the next hour, or was it two? Time has a way of slipping when you're deeply embedded in a mechanical failure, trying to integrate the new part without breaking everything else. By the time we were done, I had a headache. Rin had a very red tail from slamming it against my workbench twice. And the cat's tail now emitted a sound that was somewhere between a sigh and a question. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Rin sighed. We'll have to test it on an actual cat. Preferably one that can take criticism without hissing. I groaned. You mean your cat, don't you? Rin's ears flattened. Don't remind me. Last time he ate my lunch. Oh yes, I said, nodding sagely. The infamous lunch incident of 2047. She shot me a glare that could have melted steel. Well, speaking of Rin's cat, let's call him Mr. Whiskers for dramatic effect, because I'm nothing if not theatrical. He was, as you might imagine, less than thrilled about being subjected to our experiments. He was a tabby with one white paw, which, in cat terms, apparently means he is chosen by the gods or some such nonsense. And he had a habit of judging everyone from the safety of his perch on Rin's bookshelf. Come on, Mr. Whiskers, I cooed, holding out my hand with an offered treat because bribery is my love language. Just for 5 minutes. We need to see if this singing tail thing works on a moving cat, not just the static one we've been testing. Mr. Whiskers regarded me with the kind of disdain that only a cat who has never once felt guilty about knocking things off tables can muster. Rin sighed and reached for him, but he darted away, tail flicking in annoyance. He knows this is your fault. I gasped, offended. Me, never, this is purely your doing. Mr. Whiskers, in his infinite wisdom, or perhaps just his disdain for both of us, chose that moment to leap onto my workbench and proceed to knock over a stack of blueprints. Rin pinched the bridge of her nose. Momo. I grinned. Yes, did you need something? She glared. Then, slowly, she reached down and picked up a tiny screwdriver from the floor, one that I had definitely misplaced earlier, and held it up to my face. I backed away. Oh, that's mine. Mr. Whiskers, now bored with our antics, sauntered over to me and began grooming his paw as if this were the most interesting thing in the world. Rin raised an eyebrow. You are impossible. I shrugged, unapologetic, but I'm also very good at what I do. She muttered something under her breath that I think involved the words demon and workshop, but she didn't deny it. Well, meanwhile, back in our workshop, the singing tale was, well, not exactly singing. It was more like a sad little sigh that made you want to pet the cat and tell it everything would be all right. Kaido returned 2 days later, as if summoned by our progress or lack thereof. He examined the prototype with quiet curiosity, his fingers tracing the edges of the gearwork. I can feel the potential here, he said, but it's not quite there yet. I nodded enthusiastically. That's what I keep telling her, though she doesn't listen. Rin elbowed me in the ribs. Momo. Kaido chuckled, a sound so rare it made my ears twitch with delight. Don't mind her, she seems to thrive on chaos. Chaos is just another word for creativity, I said proudly. He smiled, actually smiled, and I swear, if there had been a camera nearby, this would have gone down as one of the greatest moments in cinematic history. I may or may not have subtly adjusted my posture to look more photogenic. Then he did something that made both Rin and I freeze. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key. The crescent moon-shaped one from before. He held it out palm up as if offering a gift. Momo, he said, looking at me, I'd like you to try this on the cat, see if it changes anything. I stared at the key, then at Rin, then back at Kaido. My mind raced with possibilities. Some rational, like maybe it's just an oddly shaped key for a lock we don't know about. Others far more dramatic. What if this key is the source of all catnip in existence? Rin, ever the voice of reason, said, Kaido-san, what does that key do exactly? He hesitated, then quietly, I think it might unlock something inside me. A heavy silence settled over the workshop. Even Mr. Whiskers paused his grooming to look at us with judgmental feline eyes, as if to say, well, this is awkward. Well, to be continued.